Captain Lee Dong-wook stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride and watched the stars through the main window. This was humanity's first journey beyond their solar system. After 3 months of travel, they had finally reached the Kepler 442 system. The mission was simple: explore, make contact if they found alien life, and return home with information. "Captain, I'm picking up something on the sensors," said communications specialist Choi Ji-hai from her station. Her voice was calm, but Lee could hear the excitement underneath. "Multiple ships approaching from the far side of the system." Lee walked over to look at her screen. "How many ships?" 12 large vessels, sir. They're moving in formation." Choi Ji-hai adjusted her controls. "They're definitely not human technology." Chief Engineer Park So-young looked up from her engineering console. "Their energy readings are impressive, Captain. Much more advanced than our ships." Lee felt his heart beat faster. This was it. First contact with an alien species. "Kim Tae-ho, what's our tactical status?" Tactical Officer Kim Tae-ho checked his weapons systems. "All defensive systems online, Captain. But honestly, if they want to fight, we're outgunned." "Let's hope they don't want to fight," Lee said. "Choi, open a communication channel." The alien ships came closer. They were sleek and dark, with sharp edges that made them look dangerous. As they approached, one ship moved ahead of the others. It was clearly the leader. "Channel open, Captain," Choi Ji-hai reported. "This is Captain Lee Dong-wook of the Earth, vessel Soul's Pride. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly contact." The response came quickly. The voice was deep and harsh, speaking through translation software. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Veltharian Empire. You will surrender your vessel immediately and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in destruction." Lee looked at his crew. They all seemed as surprised as he felt. "Admiral Vextar, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're explorers, not invaders. We have no hostile intentions." Silence. Vextar's voice boomed through the speakers. "You dare to speak as equals to the mighty Veltharian Empire? Your species will bow before our superior race or be eliminated." Park So-young whispered to Lee, "Captain, their technology is advanced, but our ship has some capabilities they might not expect." Lee nodded slightly, then spoke into the communicator again. "Admiral, we respect your power, but Earth has its own defensive capabilities. Surely we can find a peaceful solution that benefits both our peoples." There was silence for a long moment. When Vextar spoke again, his voice was different, angrier. "You claim to have defensive capabilities. You mock the Veltharian Empire by suggesting you could defend against us? No, Admiral, that's not what I meant." "Enough!" Vextar cut him off. "Your words are an insult to our honor. No inferior race has ever dared to suggest they could resist our might. This is a declaration of war against the Veltharian Empire." Lee felt the blood drain from his face. "Admiral, please. There's been a misunderstanding. We don't want war." 2. Late human. The insult has been given. You have declared your race capable of resistance. This cannot be tolerated. Vextar's voice became formal, like he was reading from a script. "By the ancient laws of the Veltharian Empire, war is hereby declared upon the species known as humans. Your worlds will burn, your people will serve, and your defiance will be crushed." Kim Tae-ho looked at his tactical display. "Captain, they're powering up weapons." "Evasive maneuvers," Lee ordered. "Get us out of here." The Soul's Pride turned and accelerated away from the alien fleet. The Veltharian ships followed but didn't fire. They seemed content to let the humans run. "They're not chasing us very hard," observed Kim Tae-ho. Park So-young was studying her readings. "They're letting us go on purpose. They want us to return to Earth and spread fear." Lee sat down in his captain's chair, his mind racing. "Choi, prepare a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made first contact and it didn't go well. As the Soul's Pride jumped into faster-than-light travel, Lee couldn't stop thinking about Admiral Vextar's words. The Veltharians seemed so confident, so sure of their superiority. They acted like they had conquered many other species before. "Captain," Park So-young said quietly, "do you think they really have the power to threaten Earth?" Lee looked out, at the stars rushing past. "I don't know, So-young, but I have a feeling we're about to find out what humanity is really capable of." Back in the Kepler system, Admiral Vextar stood on his command deck. His aide, Commander Korthak, approached him. "Admiral, should we pursue the human vessel?" Vextar made a dismissive gesture. "No need. Let them run home and tell their leaders what's coming. Fear weakens the enemy before the battle begins." "How long until the main fleet can be assembled?" "High. Command will mobilize within 10 cycles. We'll bring enough ships to crush 100 worlds like theirs." Vexatar looked at the spot where the human ship had disappeared. "This will be our easiest conquest yet. The humans seem weak, emotional. They spoke of peace when they should have immediately surrendered." Commander Korthak nodded. "The other conquered species were much the same before we showed them the price of resistance." "Exactly. These humans may have some basic technology, but they clearly lack warrior spirit. They ran at the first sign of conflict." Vexatar turned away from the window. "Send word to the High Command. Tell them we need a standard conquest fleet. Nothing special." What Admiral Vextar didn't know was that Captain Lee Dong-wook had not run from fear. Lee had retreated because he was a military officer who understood the value of information. The Soul's Pride had recorded everything about the Veltharian ships during their brief encounter. Hull designs, energy signatures, weapon configurations, and most importantly, behavioral patterns. As the human ship traveled back to Earth, its computers analyzed every detail of the meeting. By the time they reached home, humanity would know exactly what they were facing. The Veltharians had made their first mistake. They had given their enemy time to prepare. High Commander Zethlock stood before the massive holographic display in the war chamber of Velthara Prime. The three-dimensional map showed the entire Veltharian Empire, stretching across 200 star systems. Each conquered world glowed with the purple light of Veltharian control. "Show me this human homeworld," Zethlock commanded. The display shifted, zooming in on a small yellow star with several planets orbiting around it. One blue-green world pulsed with the marker indicating the human home. "Only one inhabited world?" Zethlock asked his aide, General Mordax. "Yes, High Commander. Our scouts report approximately 8 billion humans living on this world they call Earth. They have some basic settlements on nearby planets, but nothing significant." Zethlock studied the display with interest. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered a species confined to a single world. Most civilizations had spread to at least 5 or 6 planets before the Veltharian Empire found them. What about their military capabilities? General Mordax activated another part of the display. "Primitive by our standards. They have metal, ships that use chemical propulsion, some basic energy weapons, nothing that could threaten our battle cruisers." "And yet they dared to claim they could defend themselves," Zethlock mused. "Either they are incredibly foolish, or they're hiding something. With respect, High Commander, we've analyzed their technology thoroughly. There's nothing hidden. They're simply an arrogant young species that doesn't understand their place in the universe." Meanwhile, on Earth, President Yang Soo-jin sat in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the capital city. Around the table were the most important military and scientific leaders of humanity. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of air recycling systems. General Kang Min-ho broke the silence. "The Soul's Pride arrived 2 hours ago. Captain Lee's report is concerning." Admiral Ryu Haiwan leaned forward. "How long do we have?" "Based on the Veltharian ship speeds, at least 3 months before they can reach Earth with a significant force," replied Dr. Lim Ye-jin, Chief of Advanced Sciences. Maybe 4 if we're lucky. President Yang looked around the table. Can we defend ourselves? General Kang opened a folder. Our current military has 500 active starships, 50,000 fighter craft, and defensive platforms around Earth and Mars. Against a standard invasion force, we could hold out for weeks, maybe months. But this isn't a standard invasion force, Admiral Ryu added. According to Captain Lee's sensor data, each of their ships is equivalent to 10 of ours in firepower. Dr. Lim cleared her throat. There are some things the Veltharians don't know about us. Everyone turned to look at her. President Yang nodded for her to continue. For the past 30 years, we've been developing weapons and defense systems based on theoretical alien contact scenarios. We have technologies that we've never tested in real combat because we've never needed them. What kind of technologies? Asked General Kang. Adaptive AI combat systems, self-replicating manufacturing platforms, quantum encrypted communication networks, gravitational manipulation weapons. Dr. Lim paused. And Project Prometheus. The room became very quiet. Project Prometheus was classified at the highest levels. Are you suggesting we use Prometheus? President Yang asked carefully. I'm suggesting we might not have a choice. Back on Velthara Prime, High Commander Zethlock was reviewing the fleet composition for the human conquest. The standard protocol was overwhelming force, followed by systematic subjugation of the surviving population. 50,000 battle cruisers should be sufficient, he told General Mordax, plus support vessels, troop transports, and orbital bombardment platforms. That seems excessive for one world, High Commander. Zethlock turned to face his general. Mordax, in 300 years of conquest, what has been our greatest advantage? Superior technology and tactics, High Commander. No, our greatest advantage has been reputation. When word spreads that the Veltharian Empire has crushed yet another civilization, others surrender without fighting. But if even one species successfully resists us, others might get ideas. General Mordax understood. You want to make an example of the humans? Exactly. Their destruction must be so complete, so overwhelming, that no species will ever again dare to claim they can defend against us. The mobilization of the Veltharian war fleet was an impressive sight. 50,000 ships of various sizes gathered in the space around Velthara Prime. The smallest vessels were the size of human battleships. The largest were flying cities capable of destroying entire planets. Admiral Vextar, who had first encountered the humans, was given command of the advance fleet. His job was to soften up human defenses before the main force arrived. These humans will regret their words, Vextar said to his fleet commanders during the final briefing. They spoke of defensive capabilities. We will show them what real military power looks like. On Earth, the preparations were very different. Instead of gathering ships in one place, humanity was scattering its forces. Hidden bases on asteroids were activated. Secret weapons platforms came online. Manufacturing facilities that had been disguised as civilian structures began producing military equipment at unprecedented rates. Captain Lee Dong-wook was promoted to admiral and given command of the 1st Contact Defense Force. His first order was simple: make the aliens work for every inch of space. Park So-young, now Chief Engineer of Alien Technology Integration, led teams working around the clock to reverse engineer Veltharian technology from the sensor data collected during first contact. Their ships are powerful but predictable, she reported to Admiral Lee. They rely on brute force rather than innovation. That's going to be their weakness. Kim Tae-ho was placed in charge of developing new tactical doctrines. They've conquered other species using the same methods for centuries, he explained to his planning team. That means they'll expect us to fight like everyone else has fought. We need to do something completely different. 3 months after first contact, Veltharian scouts reached the edge of the human solar system. They found exactly what they expected: a species trying desperately to build defenses around their homeworld. What they didn't find were the thousands of hidden human ships positioned throughout the solar system, waiting in complete silence. The Veltharians had superior technology, but humans had something the aliens had never encountered in their centuries of conquest. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. They understood war in ways that a species accustomed to easy victories could never imagine. The Veltharians were about to learn the difference between conquest and warfare. Admiral Vextar's advance fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the human solar system. 20,000 Veltharian ships spread out in perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming in the light of the human star. "Scan the system," Vextar ordered from his command ship. The tactical officer studied his displays. 8 planets, Admiral. The third planet appears to be their homeworld. Significant energy readings from defensive installations around planets 3 and 4. Planet 4? A red world they call Mars, Admiral. It has several large space stations and what appears to be a defensive grid. Vextar looked at the tactical display. The humans had built exactly the kind of defenses he expected from a primitive species. Fixed positions, predictable placements, easy targets. Begin with the outer defenses. Destroy the installations around Mars first. Let the humans watch their defenses fall before we reach their homeworld. Commander O.J. Sung received the warning as soon as the Veltharian fleet appeared. From his command center on Phobos Station, he could see the alien ships moving toward Mars like a dark cloud. All stations, this is Phobos Command. Operation Steel Wall is now active. I repeat, Steel Wall is active. Around Mars, what appeared to be simple defensive platforms suddenly revealed their true nature. Each platform split apart, releasing dozens of smaller ships that had been hidden inside. Within minutes, the human defenders went from 200 visible ships to over 5,000. But that was just the beginning. "Launch the Wasps," O ordered. From hidden launchers on Mars's surface, thousands of tiny ships no bigger than fighters streaked into space. But these weren't ordinary fighters. Each one carried an advanced AI that could learn and adapt during combat. Admiral Vextar watched his tactical display with growing confusion. "Where did all these ships come from?" "Unknown, Admiral. Our initial scans showed only a few hundred defensive platforms. The first exchange of fire was devastating, but not in the way Vexatar expected. The Veltharian ships opened fire with their powerful energy weapons, destroying several human platforms. But the humans didn't respond with similar weapons. Instead, the tiny wasp fighters swarmed around the Veltharian ships like angry insects. They moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually coordinated by quantum-encrypted communications. As the Veltharians shot down the small ships, the surviving wasps learned from each destruction, becoming harder to hit. "These fighters are adapting to our targeting systems," reported the Veltharian tactical officer. "Impossible. No organic mind can process information that quickly. Admiral, I don't think organic minds are controlling them." Commander O watched the battle from his command center. The wasps were performing exactly as designed, but they were just the opening move. "Captain Nam Hyun-woo, you're cleared for Phase 2. Captain Nam's experimental stealth squadron had been waiting in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. His 12 ships were completely invisible to Veltharian sensors, using technology developed from decades of theoretical research. "Stealth 1 to all units. We're going in." Nam's ships moved like ghosts through space. They passed right through the Veltharian formation without being detected. Once they were in position behind the alien fleet, they revealed themselves and opened fire. The Veltharian ships were designed to fight enemies in front of them. Their rear sections had minimal armor and weapons. Nam's squadron destroyed 6 major Veltharian vessels before the aliens even realized they were under attack. From behind, "What is happening?" Admiral Vexatar demanded. "How did they get behind us?" "Unknown, Admiral. Our sensors never detected them." For the first time in his military career, Vexatar felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. These Humans were fighting in ways that violated everything he knew about combat. On Earth, Dr. Lim Ye-jin monitored the battle from the Global Defense Command Center. The real test was about to begin. "Activate the gravity wells," she ordered. Hidden throughout the solar system were devices that the humans had never tested in combat. Using principles of gravitational manipulation, they could create areas of distorted space-time. Admiral Vextar felt his ship shudder. "Report! Admiral, we're experiencing gravitational anomalies. Something is pulling our ships out of formation. Several Veltharian vessels found themselves trapped in artificial gravity, Wells unable to maneuver. Others discovered that space itself seemed to be bending around them, making their weapons miss targets that should have been easy to hit. This is impossible, Vextar said. No species has this level of technological development. That's when the humans revealed their most shocking capability. Captain Park So-young, now aboard the command ship Soul's Revenge, activated the systems she had been developing for months. Using data collected during first contact, her team had reverse-engineered and improved upon Veltharian technology. "Fire the enhanced plasma cannons," she ordered. The weapons that struck the Veltharian ships were based on their own technology, but modified with human improvements. The aliens watched in horror as their own energy signatures turned against them, cutting through their shields as if they weren't there. "How are they using our own weapons against us?" Vextar's tactical officer asked, but Vextar was beginning to understand. These humans weren't just defending themselves. They were learning, adapting, and improving with every moment of combat. In just a few hours, they had gone from inferior technology to weapons that could match Veltharian firepower. The battle around Mars lasted 18 hours. When it ended, Admiral Vextar's fleet had been reduced by 30%. For the first time in Veltharian history, they had been forced to retreat from a battle. As the surviving alien ships pulled back to the outer system, Commander O opened a communication channel. "Admiral Vextar, this is Commander O.J. Sung of the Mars Defense Force. We tried to tell you that Earth has defensive capabilities. You should have listened." Back on Velthara Prime, High Commander Zethlock received Admiral Vextar's report with disbelief. "You're telling me that a single planet species defeated 30% of your fleet?" "High Commander, they're not what we expected. Their technology adapts in real time. They use tactics we've never encountered, and they learn from every exchange." Zethlock studied the battle recordings. The humans fought like no species he had ever seen. They used deception, adaptation, and innovation in ways that seemed almost impossible. "General Mordax, what do our xenobiologists say about these humans?" General Mordax consulted his datapad. "Very interesting, High Commander. It appears that humans are the only known species that has never achieved planetary peace. They've been in a constant state of warfare for their entire recorded history." Zethlock felt a chill run through his body. The Veltharian Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had always fought against species that were used to peace. They had never faced an enemy that understood war as thoroughly as they did. "Mordax, I want the full battle fleet mobilized. Every ship we have." "High Commander, surely that's not necessary for one world." Zethlock looked at his general with new understanding. "Mordax, I don't think we're fighting for one world anymore. I think we're fighting for our very survival." President Yang Soo-jin stood before the assembled leaders of humanity in the Global Defense Command Center. The victory at Mars had given them confidence, but everyone knew the real war was just beginning. "The Veltharians will return with everything." "They have," Yang announced. "But we're not going to wait for them to come to us. It's time to take the fight to them." Admiral Ryu Haiwan stepped forward. "Operation Righteous Fury is ready to launch, Madam President. Our fleets are positioned and waiting for your orders." General Kang Min-ho pulled up a holographic display of Veltharian space. "We've identified their key supply lines and military bases. If we can disrupt their logistics, their main fleet will be weakened before it reaches Earth." Dr. Lim Ye-jin added, Our analysis of the Mars battle has given us complete understanding of their technology. We can now build ships that are superior to theirs. Yang looked at each of her advisors. These people had transformed humanity from explorers to warriors in just a few months. Begin the operation. Captain Seo Woo-jin received her orders while commanding the strike cruiser Busan's Thunder. Her mission was to attack Veltharian supply convoys in the Arcturus sector over 50 light-years from Earth. Navigation, set course for the first target, she ordered. Her ship was one of the new class of human vessels built using captured Veltharian technology. It was faster, more heavily armed, and equipped with the adaptive AI systems that had proven so effective at Mars. The Veltharian supply convoy was traveling between two conquered worlds when Seo's ship appeared. The aliens expected their ships to be superior to anything the humans could build. They were wrong. Target the escort vessels first, Seo ordered. Let the cargo ships see what happens to their protectors. The Busan's Thunder moved through the Veltharian formation like a shark among fish. Its weapons cut through alien shields with ease, while their return fire barely scratched the human ship's adaptive armor. Within 20 minutes, the entire escort was destroyed. SEO opened a communication channel to the surviving cargo ships. This is Captain Seo Woo-jin of the Earth Defense Force. Your military escorts are gone. Surrender your ships and you will be treated as prisoners of war. Resist, and you will be destroyed. The cargo ships surrendered immediately. Similar scenes played out across Veltharian space as human strike forces appeared where they were least expected. Captain Baek Da-eun led raids against military outposts. Commander Kim Tae-ho infiltrated communication stations and learned Veltharian fleet movements. Captain Yoon Ji-won's intelligence ships gathered information about the alien empire's internal structure, but the humans discovered something unexpected during these raids. The Veltharian Empire wasn't as unified as it appeared. On the world of Zephyria Prime, Captain Bayek's ground forces encountered something surprising. The local population wasn't Veltharian at all. They were a different species entirely, one that had been conquered decades ago. "They're prisoners," reported Lieutenant Colonel Lee In-hai after questioning the local inhabitants. "The Veltharians conquered their world and forced them to work in mining operations." Bayek realized this was an opportunity. "Can you translate their language?" "Already working on it, Captain. Our AI systems are adapting to their communication patterns." Within hours, Bayek was able to communicate with the Zephyrian leaders. What she learned changed everything. "The Veltharians rule through fear," the Zephyrian elder explained. "They have conquered nearly 100 species, but most of us hate them. We serve only because we have no choice." "What if you had a choice?" Beck asked. Back on Earth, this information reached the highest levels of government immediately. President Yang called an emergency meeting. "This changes our entire strategy," she announced. "We're not just fighting the Veltharians. We're fighting to liberate dozens of enslaved species." Admiral Ryu studied the intelligence reports. "If we can turn their own subjects against them, the Veltharian Empire will collapse from within." Dr. Lim was already working on the implications. "We'll need to develop communication systems that can reach across their empire, and we'll need to coordinate uprisings on multiple worlds simultaneously." General Kang nodded. "We'll need to train resistance fighters and provide them with weapons." The next phase of human strategy was unlike anything the Veltharians had ever faced. Instead of simply destroying their military, the humans began liberating conquered worlds and turning their populations into allies. Commander Park So-young led the technical teams that developed translation systems for dozens of alien languages. Within weeks, human agents were making contact with resistance groups throughout Veltharian space. The effect was immediate and devastating. Worlds that had been stable for decades suddenly erupted in rebellion. Veltharian garrison forces found themselves fighting not just human raiders, but their own former subjects. High Commander Zethlock watched his empire crumble with growing desperation. How are the humans coordinating all these uprisings? General Mordax consulted the latest reports. They've somehow managed to communicate with our subject species. They're providing weapons, training, and tactical support to rebel groups. Our own subjects are turning against us? Yes, High Commander. 17 worlds are now in open rebellion. Our garrison forces are requesting immediate reinforcement. Zethlock realized that the humans had done something no enemy had ever accomplished. They had turned the Veltharian Empire's greatest strength, its size, into a weakness. Recall all forces to defend the core worlds, he ordered. We'll let the outer territories rebel. Once we crush the humans, we can reconquer them later. But the humans weren't finished. Captain Nam Hyun-woo's stealth squadron had been conducting deep reconnaissance missions throughout Veltharian space. They had discovered something that would change the war forever. Admiral Ryu, this is Captain Nam. You need to see what we've found on Velthara Prime. The intelligence Nam transmitted was stunning. The Veltharian military was much smaller than they had claimed. Most of their invincible fleet consisted of outdated ships and poorly trained crews. The Veltharians had built their empire through psychological warfare, convincing their enemies that resistance was hopeless. They're not the unstoppable force they pretend to be, Nam reported. They're a paper tiger that relies on reputation, more than actual strength. Admiral Ryu realized what this meant. If we can destroy their main fleet in a decisive battle, their entire empire will collapse. President Yang approved the final phase of Operation Righteous Fury. Prepare for the assault on Velthara Prime. It's time to end this war. As human fleets gathered for the final battle, rebellion continued to spread throughout Veltharian space. Species that had been enslaved for generations saw hope for the first time in decades. The humans had done more than just defend themselves. They had fundamentally changed the nature of galactic politics. The idea that a military empire could rule through fear alone was being shattered by a species that understood something the Veltharians had forgotten. War wasn't just about having the biggest guns. It was about having something worth fighting for. And for the first time in their history, the humans were fighting not just for their own freedom, but for the freedom of an entire galaxy. 2 years had passed since first contact, and the Veltharian Empire was dying. High Commander Zethlock stood in his command center on Velthara Prime, watching reports of defeat pour in from across the galaxy. Status report, he demanded from General Mordax. Mordax's face was grim. 67 worlds have declared independence. Our fleet strength is down to 30% of original numbers. Supply lines are completely disrupted. And the humans? Their forces are now operating in over 100 star systems. They've formed something they call the Galactic Liberation Alliance with 43 different species. Zethlock felt his world crumbling around him. The war that was supposed to last a few weeks had become a nightmare that never ended. Worse, his own military leaders were beginning to question his decisions. On the bridge of the Liberation Fleet, Flagship Seoul's Victory, Admiral Lee Dong-wook studied the tactical displays. The human fleet had grown from a few hundred ships to over 10,000 vessels, many of them built using technology shared by their new alien allies. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 3 more Veltharian worlds, reported his communications officer. Lee nodded. Accept their surrender and send peacekeeping forces. Make sure our alien allies understand. No revenge killings. We're liberators, not conquerors. This had become the human way of war. Unlike the Veltharians who ruled through fear, humans offered hope. Every world they liberated was given the choice to join the alliance or remain independent. Most chose to join. Colonel Lee In-hai commanded the famous Earth's Wolves Special Forces Unit. Her soldiers were recruited from the best warriors humanity could produce, but they fought alongside troops from dozens of alien species. Intelligence reports that Velthara Prime is still heavily defended, she told her mixed human-alien strike team. But most of their defenders are conscripts from conquered worlds. They don't want to fight for the Veltharians anymore. Her team was preparing for the most dangerous mission of the war, infiltrating the Veltharian homeworld to gather intelligence for the final assault. Remember, Lee addressed her troops, we're not here to destroy civilians. Our target is the military command structure. The Veltharian people deserve a chance to choose their own future. On Velthara Prime, Admiral Vextar faced a crisis of loyalty. Half of his fleet commanders were talking about surrender. The other half wanted to fight to the death. The humans have offered terms, Commander Korthak told him privately. They say any Veltharian who lays down their weapons will be treated with dignity. Vexatar looked out at his homeworld below. The cities were dark, their power systems failing as the Empire collapsed. Do you believe them? Admiral, I've studied their behavior for 2 years. They've kept every promise they've made. They treat prisoners well. They don't enslave conquered populations. Korthak paused. They're not like us. That was the truth. That cut deepest. The humans had proven that it was possible to win a war without becoming monsters. They had shattered the Veltharian Empire while maintaining their principles. Deep in the underground facilities of Velthara Prime, Captain Yoon-ji Won and her intelligence team had successfully infiltrated the planet. Using advanced camouflage, technology, and help from local resistance groups, they moved through the capital city gathering crucial information. The Veltharian government is split, Yoon reported to Admiral Lee. About half want to negotiate surrender. The other half are planning a final desperate attack on Earth. What kind of attack? They're building something called a world killer weapon. It's designed to destroy entire planets. Admiral Lee felt his blood run cold. Even facing defeat, some Veltharians were willing to commit genocide rather than admit they were wrong. Can it be stopped? Working on it, Admiral, but we'll need to act fast. The revelation of the world killer weapon forced the Liberation Alliance to accelerate their plans. President Yang Soo-jin authorized the immediate assault on Velthara Prime. We can't risk them completing that weapon, she told the War Council. Even if it means higher casualties, we have to end this now. Admiral Ryu Haewon commanded the largest fleet ever assembled by humanity. 10,000 human ships, supported by vessels from 43 allied species, approached the Veltharian homeworld. The final battle began in the outer reaches of the Veltharian system. The remaining Imperial fleet, led by Admiral Vextar, met the Liberation forces in desperate combat. But this battle was different from all the others. The Veltharian ships fought with the fury of desperation, while the Liberation fleet fought with the precision of experienced warriors. Captain Seo Woo-jin's advanced destroyer squadron broke through the Veltharian lines and headed for the planet's surface. Target the World Killer facility, she ordered. Don't let them complete that weapon. On the surface, Colonel Lee In-hai's ground forces were fighting their way through the capital city. The Veltharian military was putting up fierce resistance, but civilian populations were actively helping the human soldiers. The people want this war to end, Lee reported to command. They're as tired of fighting as we are. In his command bunker, High Commander Zethlock watched his empire's final moments. The world killer weapon was 90% complete, but human forces were closing in on the facility. High Commander, General Mordax approached him carefully. Our fleet is broken. Our defenses are failing. Perhaps it's time to consider surrender. Zethlock turned to face his oldest friend. Surrender? The mighty Veltharian Empire surrendering to a single-world species? High Commander, they're not a single-world species anymore. They've built something we never managed, a true alliance of equals. They've proven that strength doesn't come from fear. As if to emphasize his point, explosions rocked the bunker. Human forces had breached the outer defenses. High Commander Zethlock, a voice came over the communication system. This is Admiral Lee Dong-wook of the Liberation Alliance. Your fleet is defeated. Your world killer facility is destroyed. You have one choice left: surrender with dignity or die for nothing. Zethlock looked around his command center. His officers were watching him, waiting for his decision. Outside, he could hear the sounds of battle growing closer. For the first time in his life, the High Commander of the Veltharian Empire felt something he had never experienced before: respect for his enemy. The humans had fought brilliantly, showing mercy to those who surrendered while being utterly ruthless to those who continued fighting. They had proven that it was possible to be both strong and compassionate. "Open a channel," Zethlock ordered quietly. "Admiral Lee, this is High Commander Zethlock. I request terms for surrender." The response came immediately. "High Commander, you and your forces will be treated with dignity. All we ask is that you help us contact any remaining Veltharian forces and order them to stand down. And then we'll work together to build something better than an empire, something where all species can be free." As Zethlock gave the order for all Veltharian forces to surrender, he realized something that shook him to his core. The humans had won not because they were more ruthless than the Veltharians, but because they were better. They had shown the galaxy that strength without compassion was just another form of weakness. The final battle for Velthara Prime ended not with destruction, but with something unprecedented in galactic history: a defeated enemy choosing to trust their conquerors. High Commander Zethlock stood in the conference room aboard the Liberation flagship Soul's Victory. Across from him sat Admiral Lee Dong-wook, President Yang Soo-jin, and representatives from dozens of alien species that had joined the Liberation Alliance. "High Commander," President Yang began, "we need to discuss the future of the Veltharian people." Zethlock had expected execution or imprisonment. Instead, he found himself being offered a choice that no Veltharian conqueror had ever given to a defeated enemy. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully. Admiral Lee leaned forward. "We mean exactly what we said during the surrender negotiations. The Veltharian Empire is finished, but the Veltharian people deserve a chance to build something better." Dr. Lim Ye-jin activated a holographic display showing plans for a new form of galactic government. "We're proposing a galactic confederation. Every species gets representation based on population and contribution. No one species rules over the others." Zethlock studied the plans with growing amazement. "You're giving us equal status? After everything we've done?" "Not equal status," corrected President Yang. "Earned status. If the Veltharian people choose to join the Confederation and prove they've abandoned their imperial ambitions, then yes, you'll have full membership." General Mordax, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "What about our military leaders? What about those who committed war crimes?" Admiral Ryu Haiwan answered. "There will be trials. Justice must be served for those who chose cruelty over duty. But we're not interested in revenge. We're interested in preventing future wars." Over the following months, the transformation of Veltharian society was remarkable. Without the constant pressure of maintaining an empire, their people began to rediscover arts, sciences, and philosophy that had been suppressed for centuries. Admiral Vextar, who had first encountered the humans, found himself working alongside Captain Lee Dong-wook to establish new communication protocols between species. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "Admiral Lee," Vextar said during one of their planning sessions, "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For assuming you were weak because you spoke of peace. I understand now that it takes more strength to offer mercy than to demand surrender." Lee nodded. "We had to learn that lesson the hard way, too. Humans spent thousands of years fighting each other before we figured out that cooperation was more powerful than conquest." The establishment of the Galactic Confederation headquarters on the neutral world of New Harmony was a symbol of how much had changed. Species that had been enemies for generations worked together to build something unprecedented. Colonel Lee In-hai, now General of Confederation Security Forces, oversaw the integration of former Veltharian military units into the New Galactic Defense Force. Her first major decision was controversial but symbolic. I'm recommending that Admiral Vextar be given command of the Third Fleet, she announced to the Confederation Council. There were objections from some of the formerly enslaved species, but Lee stood firm. We can't build a future based on past hatred. Admiral Vextar has proven his commitment to the new order. More importantly, his knowledge of former Imperial territory makes him invaluable for peacekeeping operations. President Yang, now serving as the first elected president of the Galactic Confederation, addressed the assembled representatives during the first annual council meeting. 2 years ago, humanity made first contact with a species that saw us as inferior. They declared war because they couldn't imagine that anyone would dare resist their power. Yang paused, looking around the chamber filled with dozens of different alien species. Today we're here together, not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in building something that has never existed before, a truly free galaxy. The applause that followed came from beings who had been mortal enemies just months before. Captain Park So-young, now Chief of Confederation Technology Development, had perhaps the most important job of all. Her teams were working to share advanced technology among all member species while ensuring that no one could use it for conquest. The key, she explained to her mixed human-alien engineering teams, is making sure that defensive technologies always stay ahead of offensive ones. We want to make war so difficult and costly that no one will ever try it again. The Confederation's first major test came when a previously unknown species called the hegemony attacked from outside known space. But instead of facing a divided galaxy of competing empires, they encountered something they had never seen before. 47 different species responded to the attack with coordinated defense. Human tactical doctrine, Veltharian ship designs, Zephyrian communication technology, and dozens of other specialized capabilities combined into an unstoppable defensive force. The hegemony's invasion was crushed within weeks, but instead of being destroyed, they were offered the same choice that had been given to the Veltharians: join the Confederation or remain isolated but peaceful. 5 years after first contact, former High Commander Zethlock stood in the Terran Veltharian Military Academy on Earth. He was watching the first graduation ceremony of mixed species officers who would serve together in the Confederation Defense Force. "Never thought I'd see the day," commented Admiral Vextar, who stood beside him. "Which day?" Zethlock asked. "When young Veltharians and humans would train together as friends instead of enemies." In the graduating class, Veltharian cadets stood next to human ones, along with representatives from dozens of other species. They had learned to fight together, think together, and most importantly, trust together. The graduation speaker was Admiral Lee Dong-wook, who had been promoted to Supreme, Commander of Confederation Forces. "You represent something that has never existed before," Lee told the graduates. "You are warriors trained not for conquest but for protection. Your job is not to expand territory but to defend freedom." As the ceremony concluded, the cadets took an oath that would have been impossible just years before. "We swear to defend all free peoples regardless of species or origin. We will fight not for empire but for liberty. We will show mercy to the defeated and justice to the innocent. We are not conquerors. We are guardians of peace." Later that evening, at the graduation celebration, Admiral Vextar approached Admiral Lee with a glass of Terran wine. "A toast," Vextar proposed. "To what?" "To the day the Veltharian Empire declared war on the wrong race." Vextar smiled. "It was the best mistake we ever made." Admiral Lee raised his glass. "To new beginnings." As they drank, both men looked out at the celebration around them. Humans, Veltharians, and dozens of other species were laughing, talking, and planning together. The greatest war in galactic history had ended not with the destruction of the losing side, but with the creation of something entirely new. The humans had proven that their greatest strength wasn't their ability to fight, but their ability to turn enemies into allies. They had shown the galaxy that true power came not from fear, but from hope. And in doing so, they had transformed not just themselves, but the entire galaxy. The war that began with a misunderstanding had ended with an understanding that would last for generations. That strength and compassion, properly combined, could create peace that even former enemies would fight to protect.